Next up, new business with a changed order. First, 6.01, the board will hear a presentation from the Richardsville Coalition on their concerns with the proposed Yeat to Joshua Falls transmission line and associated substation. Mr. McCrum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll now hear from Michael Deegan representing the Richardsville Coalition.
Oh, it's up.
Okay, let me take a look here. All righty. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Regan, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the wonderful folks in Richardsville and the Richardsville Coalition regarding the Joshua Falls Yeat 765 transmission line, but more specifically, the Yeat substation siting in Culpeper County. And I want to frame this presentation not as opposition to the line, which it is, but I want to frame it more as a planning and land use briefing. I want to walk through how the project changed, why those changes matter to Culpeper, and the lasting implications of agreeing to this siting this infrastructure in Culpeper. Before getting into the project itself, it is important to understand PJM's role. PJM, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, is the regional transmission organization that coordinates grid planning across 13 states to include DC. RTEP stands for Regional Transmission Expansion Plan. In plain terms, it's where PJM's process for identifying problems in the grid and accepting solutions on how to fix them. So I'll begin with PJM's originally approved 2024 Window 1 RTEP, which selected the revised proposal 820, which is the Joshua Falls to Yeat 76 line, which was a new 765 to 500 to 230 kV substation in Yeat, or at the Yeat substation. At the time, the project was tied to an endpoint in Fauquier County off of Yeats Drive because it landed within the Fauquier area transmission node around Morrisville, Wishing Star, and Vint Hill. That's part of the network ultimately supporting Northern Virginia. From a grid planning perspective, the location made sense as the objective of this line was and still remains bulk power transfer to the Northern Virginia data centers. As you can see from the line itself, it was presented as an existing substation Joshua Falls. That purple represents utilizing existing rights of way with some small greenfield sections, and then hitting where Vontae is in Hanover, and then working its way up north through North Anna and up to Bristers in Yeat, and in the original configuration, largely bypassing Culpeper, or certainly just a small pass-through. That original concept did not involve just that one line and substation. It included multiple major interconnections as a result of being located there. Other planning concepts tied to it were additional 765, the Vontae Loop, Kraken Terminal Site. It was part of a much larger regional transmission architecture. In my opinion, Yeat was always devised and conceived to be placed in that location due to the existing substations already there. The 2025 RTEP materials are also important. Again, when you're reading these RTEPs, not every proposal presented makes it through, but it certainly shows what PJM planners and project sponsors evaluated and what they envisioned for the Yeat substation. Here is the proposal 55, which wasn't selected, but it's the Heritage to Yeat 765 line. So this would be another 765 line envisioned, and this is basically what comes up through Surrey, goes through Williamsburg, and comes into that Yeat substation. It's important to know that what later planning cycles are already assessing Yeat as a viable option. That's how the RTEP process works. If it's approved in 1 year, later years can assume that topology is in place and they can start the additional build-outs. Of course, we know that that's changed from what we see today. And Dominion has stated that moving Yeat south intended to shorten the line, reduce impacts, and still meet reliability needs. But from Culpeper County's perspective, that result was that Culpeper moved from being the potential pass-through corridor or being avoided altogether to hosting the proposed endpoint substation. And that's a major change in the county's role. So how did we get here? In my opinion, one of the reasons we are standing here today is what happened in Fauquier County. On October 16, 2025, the Fauquier Planning Commission voted 4-1 to recommend denial of Dominion's expansion plan for the Mooresville substation. The vice chair at the time stated that the application failed to meet the basic standards, was incompatible with Fauquier County's comprehensive plan and rural identity, and raised public health and safety concerns. And let's put that upgrade in perspective. That was roughly just adding 3 acres to an existing 10-acre substation on a 40-acre plot. Now consider that with placing the Yeat substation off of Yeats Drive, a very much larger project. How do you think the planning department or the board of supervisors would evaluate that project? And I think we know the answer to that. So meanwhile, Dominion had largely already been engaging Culpeper Board of Supervisors with the CTZ, and in September they started engaging county staff regarding the Joshua Falls, September of 2025, regarding Joshua Falls Yeat. And at that time, it initially started as simply passing through the county. But subsequent discussions in September, they started talking about specific parcels, again, parcels where Yeat is proposed to land today. We know that to the county staff's credit, they indicated in early September that it was time to address the board on this project, to which Dominion agreed to that night. And then subsequently the next day, they decided that they were not ready for public rollout and were not ready to discuss it in this Board of Supervisors setting. But certainly that word had gotten out to some of the board members, and one of the former board members asked about this project, to which the Dominion staff said they weren't aware. And I think they couched it that there are different concepts in planning, but certainly the members in the room on the Dominion staff knew about the Joshua Falls Yeat line. Certainly later in September, as the board started to get more awareness of the line, I have to applaud Supervisor Bates with your questions to Dominion. They were exceptionally well framed. I'm told that you didn't get answers back, but it was definitely the county reaching out to try to get answers early, and it's a credit to the board for doing so. But it was not until January that this board was informed that Dominion had intended to move the landing site into Culpeper. And that history matters for your discussion today. It didn't begin as the obvious endpoint here. Culpeper became the endpoint through later project evolution. The move to Culpeper requires a formal scope change, and that scope change still requires approval from the PGM board. So, now turning to the May 2026 TAC updates and the reliability analysis update. TAC is PJM's Transmission Expansion Advisory Committee, and it's essentially where they meet. It's a public-facing venue where PJM meets to discuss reliability updates, analysis, transmission planning updates, project recommendations, and scope changes before board action. So when the material appears here, it's important because that's the path towards PJM approval. In the May TAC red line show that this is not merely a relocation. The scope change materially reconfigured the project. Yeat was moved south to Culpeper and renamed in this document Culpeper Yeat. The Joshua Falls Yeat line was shortened from 156 miles to 115 miles, exclusively greenfield, almost. The AP portion was reduced from roughly 70 miles to 1 mile, and the Dominion portion was reframed at approximately 114 miles. Very important here, the 230 kV yard was removed at Yeat. And then certain other planning concepts were removed for right now due to the move, such as the looping language and the Kraken being redirected to Bristers instead of picking up at Yeat and Fauquier. And certainly some of the 500 kV interconnection plans change. But the important note to take away from this is on that first read, PJM board approval is targeted for July 2026. It has not happened. This project is not finally approved by PJM. And then the second is important to note, and we've already discussed it, PJM will model the scope change presented herein as part of the 2026 RTEP competitive window. And that essentially means that once the scope change is approved, they're going to begin planning around it. So the 2026 RTEP planning is underway, and I imagine those planners are eagerly awaiting that finalized PJM scope change, should they approve it. All right, we have already covered most of the major changes in the original plan, but I want to pause on one item here: the required in-service date of June 1st, 2029. They're not just describing a preferred schedule there. That's the date the project is supposed to be available as a reliability solution. It's planned around that. If both the endpoint And now we're hearing, and I'll go over that later, the starting point remains unsettled. Culpeper and now Campbell County, they still face local land use approval there and likely SEC scrutiny. Then that 2029 date becomes a feasibility issue and not just a calendar issue. The proposed Culpeper Yeat is initially slated to receive one new 765 greenfield line, which we all know about, and it's supposed to connect to two 765 transformers. Those are massive. It's to cut into the existing line at Richardsville, that's line 594. But what's glossed over is it's also to receive other 500 kV interconnection. So for example, it's to receive a Morrisville Wishing Star 500 kV extension using existing right-of-way. Utilizing existing right-of-way does not necessarily mean using existing towers. They're not capable of double circuits. It could mean additional towers in that same right-of-way coming into Richardsville. It's also important that there's another note there about a revised endpoint for a new 500 kV from Yeat to Vint Hill. That means Culpeper Yeat is not merely a dead-end substation to receive 765. It's being configured from day one as a multi-terminal 765 500 kV bulk transfer node. Again, those are discussions where it shouldn't be Valley Link PR, it should be Dominion planners so they can explain to you what exactly they're proposing for Culpeper County. In the interest of time, I'll move quickly through 9 and 10. This just highlights the cancellations mainly to the 230 substations and some tie-ins. Slide 10 emphasizes the rebuild of 594 line. So 19 miles of the existing line that's through Richardsville into down to Orange to Spotsylvania and then up to Fauquier. And that could be to accommodate those additional circuits or make room in the right-of-way for additional structures. It certainly shows that the impacts to Richardsville and potentially around the county, should this station be approved, there will be extensive utility build-out for some time. All right. The most important point is when it's assessed as a downscope, that was clear. That was just the local-facing components, the 230 loops. But the important point to remember is this remains 765, two 765 transformers. It's a heart of the issue. The April-May 2026 scope change reduced the local-facing functions, but it didn't eliminate the regional bulk transfer functions. In its current configuration, the project no longer includes that 230 local serving component. So whether Yeat is placed in Culpeper or not does not directly impact the local services will be drawing feeds from outside the county regardless. For example, the Dominion CTZ project already approved, with already SEC approval, has that separate CPCN, that Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, already will provide power to a significant portion of the data centers already in queue or built. And certainly this is just Dominion's slide showing the CTZ, and you can see in purple the 230 loops being designed there. You can see drawing power from the north into Fauquier, and then certainly they have plans for the Oak Green substation build out in Orange to accept potentially additional loops. But certainly that's not all of the changes. Dominion's 2025 local plan suggests separate supplemental projects already being planned, irrespective of Yeat Culpeper being placed, or Yeat being placed in Culpeper. Bottom line for this board to remember, not approving Yeat does not stop Dominion's requirements to provide power to the existing queue. If the 230 serving function at Yeat has been removed and the CTZ project has already been approved, along with other projects, then Culpeper should ask a very direct question. What direct local benefit does Culpeper receive from hosting this bulk transfer substation? And that's why it matters for land use. This is not just about one transmission line, it's about whether Culpeper becomes a long-term regional bulk transfer corridor. Once a substation with two transformers, 765 transformers, is established in Culpeper, it alters the planning, it adds additional transmission planning, adds additional lines, and adds future industrial growth to the county. As we discussed, the future planning starts day one when PJM approves the scope change at Yeat. Recent disclosures also indicate that uncertainty exists on the other end of the project. The Joshua Falls starting point in Campbell County will require a relocated substation and a separate SCC filing and a SUP down in Campbell. And that's important because it means uncertainty exists on both ends of the line. For Culpeper, the issue is whether the county should accept the land use consequences of becoming the endpoint for a project that has materially changed since the 2024 RTEP approval. And as we wrap up, this is just an overlay from their documents of where Yeat would be sited, and you can see that multicolored line is the 765 line coming in. From that white triangle where the substation would be centered in those parcels, you would have 500 kV lines leaving that substation and tying into the 594 line, which is depicted in purple to the east. We talked about the upgrades of that line. We talked about the 500 kV, the additional circuit that'll be coming in that existing right-of-way. And then we still don't exactly know, and that's for the planners to discuss, where the additional 500 kV, the new line they speak of in the 2022 RTEP. This is just to quickly, not to make this the point of it, but this is the Yeat, or correction, the Joshua Falls overlay here, and you can see the existing substation there depicted above that one box with the black triangle. That's how it was presented in 2024 RTEP. That's how it was presented in the 2026 May TIAC, that it was upgrades to the existing substation. Now, just as of a few days ago, it's going to require that relocation to a non-contiguous parcel, which will require a SUP from Campbell County. It'll require a new SEC application for that relocation submitted separately by Appalachian Power, and it will require deconstruction of some of the 765 leading into Joshua Falls at the existing substation to plan for that relocation. So in closing, as has been stated, I think 3 times now, the project approved in 2024 is material changed, not only in routing, but in siting and functions here in Culpeper. You went from avoiding the major impacts to potentially absorbing them for the entire project. It's no longer simply about where one large transmission line goes. It's about what Culpeper is being asked to assume. Put plainly, the question is whether Culpeper County, especially Richardsville, should become a utility sacrifice zone for bulk power transport north. I respectfully urge the board to continue treating this as a major land use, planning, and infrastructure decision with consequences that, frankly, probably will last for generations. I urge the board to send its letter to PJM documenting these concerns before the scope change vote. Now is the time to get answers before the project is treated as an inevitable in later proceedings. The risk of future line terminations and additional transmission corridors through Culpeper County is real, and the county should evaluate this proposal not for just what it is described as day one, but what is shown, what future infrastructure can create for tomorrow. For the board, the question is not whether electricity requires infrastructure. Of course it does. The question is not whether PJM and Dominion assert a much broader regional need for power to Northern Virginia. They certainly claim that. The question is whether this specific project at this specific location at this specific endpoint provides enough local benefit to justify placing one of the largest bulk transfer substations this region has ever seen in this community, a community defined by historic, rural, and agricultural character that is Richardsville, with impacts to Culpeper County as a whole. That is your duty to your constituents. That is precisely why this board has authority over substation siting through conditional use permits. That is the land use question. It's a planning question. It is a local governance question. And it's where Virginia law explicitly gives the county land use and zoning authority. That authority is real and should be exercised seriously. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Willing to take questions?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there is a second part of the presentation.
Okay, well, do you want to do questions to the first part, or do you want to do the second part real quick?
Up to you. I just wanted to
Board,
notify
what
you
would
there
you
is a
like to do?
second.
I had a question.
How about we just do some questions to the first, if
Yes,
that's
sir, Mr.
okay, if someone has them?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You stated back in the beginning of the presentation that if you could go back to maybe the first or second slide, I think it was numbered 820, and you said that in your opinion, Yeat was always meant to finish at the existing substation in Fauquier County.
Not an existing substation. There's existing nodes. Yeat it derives its name, we assume, where it was supposed to be placed in Yeat, off of Yeat's Drive. It would be a new substation. I spoke about Morrisville, which was an
Okay.
existing substation that they wanted to upgrade. Certainly, it is a bit of irony that now by moving it to Culpeper, there will be required upgrades to Morrisville as a result of moving the Yeat proposed substation down to Culpeper.
Okay, so initially, it would not end at the Mooresville area where there's an existing substation. You had talked about that they would expand it.
There's three nodes essentially, and again, I would invite the Dominion engineers to come and explain this to you, but certainly, as I understand it, there's the nodes, the major 500 kV interconnections that feed Northern Virginia are spread out along a couple substations. And the idea was, when you put Yeat in this location off of Yeats Drive, you've got the existing 500 kV, not loops, if you will, but tie-ins that you could reach all those substations in a relatively confined area, and then bring in the additional interconnections right to that area.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. And then also, you mentioned that the two 765 kV transformers, and so were they not a part of the initial?
They were a part of the original solution, and again, that's why, right? The question is why. Again, I would definitely invite the engineers to, but there's usually three reasons why. One, it increases, it's called N1 reliability, and that essentially means if one component fails, then they've got the backup. And you can't just replace a 765 transformer. It is a massive amount of infrastructure there, right? So we have that. But it can also indicate, and as the planning documents indicate from follow-on RTEP cycles, that there is the ability to bring in additional 765 kV lines, and it was envisioned in the planning documents.
Okay. And then, in your opinion, so Fauquier denied this project?
They didn't. Okay. Well, the timing there. They denied the Morrisville
Right.
substation upgrade. So one could argue that provided some indicators to Dominion that there might be some issues of citing this in Fauquier. Furthermore, after this board decided to deny Joshua Falls Yeat and the associated substation, 2 days later, Fauquier passed a resolution opposing the Joshua Falls Yeat project, a project that does not come into their county. Why would they do that?
And, but Fauquier, if the project were to be built in Fauquier, it would still have to be a 100 acre. They'd have to build a brand-new substation similar to what they're proposing.
Correct.
For here in Culpeper, correct?
Correct.
All right, but it sounds to me like the more significant issue, well, for all of us, it's significant, but the fact that we know that there are two 765 kilovolt transformers indicates an expanded power usage from that area, correct?
To me, it does.
Yes, sir. Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions? I'll just say thank you very much. It's been very informative. Appreciate you being here. A question I have, which I know you can't answer with certainty, but I ask it to everyone. If Culpeper successfully denies this, what do you think happens next?
I don't know. Hopefully, it'll make some reevaluation of the plan itself. Certainly, it's a very ambitious plan to bring 765 into Virginia, especially through central Virginia. Certainly, that's not the only way to meet reliability needs. Certainly, this location is not the only location. So, I would just say, from a perspective of Culpeper County, those are all larger questions that you frankly don't have to answer. You have to frankly assess if this complies with your comprehensive plan, the local direction your constituents want to go, and the preservation of the rural and agricultural lands in Culpeper. And I think that's what we have to frame this. They can certainly, Dominion can assert the local reliability need. Again, that's not out of the scope of this discussion. And they can, there's certainly other avenues to approach projects like this. And I think we can all agree that moving 765 into populated areas, moving it, making this essentially the East Coast spine, making it run through Central Virginia, which doesn't have a large load, comparatively speaking to Northern Virginia, is very ambitious. And I think we can all agree there are other ways to do this project.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second
One-
component?
Oh.
Wait, sorry,
Just-
Supervisor Payne.
Really quick, I just want to say thank you very much. Most people will never know the time and the effort that you've put into this. I've been there at the meetings with you and seen it. it's all volunteer work that he's doing here in my the Stevensburg district. Thanks you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
And then we will hear a second part of the presentation specifically on the substation. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Yes. My name is Frank Toomey. I'm a lifelong Culpeper resident. I've lived in the Richardsville area about 25 years. Thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen, for letting me present today. During the meeting on May 19th with Dominion, I feel like they tried to create fear by saying if Culpeper doesn't allow the substation to be in Culpeper, that we would have lines running through the county. If that was to happen, if they moved the substation north, worst case scenario, we'd have 6 miles of transmission line going through the county. The biggest risk to Culpeper County is the substation itself. In this presentation, I'll explain why the substation is the worst case scenario for Culpeper County. And it's not just a Richardsville issue, and you'll see as I get into this presentation, you know, the Richardsville Coalition, over the last couple of weeks, we've realized the rest of Culpeper County is not involved in this fight because they don't realize how it's going to affect the rest of the county. So part of this presentation is to show the rest of the county how it could affect them. So all the information that I've put in here is coming from PJM. It's coming directly from their planning materials and RTEP proposals, which Michael talked a lot about that already. This presentation is a mix of what is going to happen, what could happen, and what probably will happen based on the PJM supplied information. These concepts are based on the original Yeat site planned in Fauquier and the latest revision that they've proposed for Culpeper County. These concepts, sources used to create this presentation are the PJM May 2026 TAC, scope changes, and 2024 and 2025 PJM RTAP. This is PJM's information directly published by them. It's not information we're making up. So the original site, or the Richardsville site, the key things we're looking at here are the Joshua Falls to Yeat 765 transmission line. They're going to be connecting, or they want to connect the Yeat into a 500 kV line, number 594. That line runs from Spotsylvania to Morrisville. They want to rebuild 8 miles of the existing 500 kV line that runs from Yeat to Spotsylvania, to Morrisville, and then 11 miles of existing 500 kV line that runs from Yeat to Spotsylvania. They also want to extend the Morrisville Wishing Star 500 kV line by 7.5 miles from Morrisville to the Culpeper Yeat site. Some of the changes they made when they moved this from Fauquier to Culpeper, I think is important. So they removed the 230 kV yard at the Yeat. This is typically used to move voltage into regional substations and load servicing networks where you can feed large industrial customers like data centers or lower voltage rings that serve local demand. For example, they could have used this to power the Culpeper Tech Zone. Note that all the local power supply was eliminated when this proposal was located to the substation in Culpeper. So for some reason, when it was in Fauquier, they had the idea they were going to use it for local electricity. When it moved to Culpeper, they eliminated that. So once again, there is no advantage for local power for Culpeper County as this site is proposed. They also canceled the second 765 kV line that was going to be coming in. However, as Michael said earlier, they kept the transformer. Doesn't really make sense. Why were these changes made? It is simple. They made these changes to meet the 2029 deadline. In a couple slides, I'll show you what this means for Culpeper County if these items were to get added back in. So this is what they're proposing. This is what they're telling us. They're proposing at the Yeat site in Culpeper. This doesn't make sense. This is over a $1 billion project. For them to put up a Yeat site, to bring in one 765 line in and tie into two 500 kV lines, it just doesn't make sense. This is all their plan is. They have plans to do more. They're just not telling us what it is. This is what it could look like, and probably will look like in Culpeper County if this Yeat site gets approved. I'll walk you through these lines and kind of tell you the thoughts on all these lines and what they are. So if you look at the red dot, that's obviously the proposed Yeat site in Richardsville. The dark green line is the 765 line coming in from Joshua Falls. That's about 3 miles in Culpeper County. The light green lines are the existing 500 kV lines that run from Spotsy to Morrisville. That's about 6 miles in Culpeper County. The aqua-colored line is the line that was in the 2025 RTEP proposal that they will need for reliability. They keep talking about reliability. One 765 line feeding is not very reliable if it goes down. They will need a second line. This route is typically hypothetical, how they would come into the county, but we think it's pretty accurate. We think that would be about 8 miles of 765 line coming in. The blue line is illustrative and may represent a project such as the tech zone. We know they eliminated that. If they were to bring it back, hopefully the tech zone would already have their power, so maybe that would go to somewhere else in the county if they decided to do something like that. The yellow line is also illustrative and shows the direction of the line when power is needed in the Shenandoah Valley load growth. We know they're going to need power. If it's a Yeat substation here, this is the site they're going to want to pull from. It all makes sense. The pink line is also illustrative and shows the direction of the line if power is needed in the Luray or Page County load growth area. And then the purple line also shows the direction of the line if the power is needed in the northern Shenandoah load growth. What will this look like in Culpeper County besides the lines running through the county? These are 500 kV lines. If the proposed Yeat site gets approved and the scenario plays out the way we believe, using the PJM information and realistic scenarios, these lines will be running through the entire county. 82 miles of 500 kV lines, totaling 376 acres of our land. Also, 13 miles of potential 230 kV lines, totaling 44 acres. This is all the land. All this land is owned by our citizens. In addition, there will be an estimated 298 of these towers in our county. I want to comment on Dominion's comment or quote, they can't control the direction of the electrons move. Culpeper County, you, Board of Supervisors, you guys can control it. The direction of these electrons need to go somewhere other than Culpeper. Culpeper needs to send these electrons north where they are needed because Culpeper doesn't need them. Let me close by saying the worst case scenario for Culpeper is allowing this substation to be built here in Culpeper. Maybe we can't control PJM and Dominion from building this substation somewhere north and running 6 miles of line through our county. But we can stop them from building the Yeat substation and running an estimated 95 miles of 500 kV line and 230 kV lines through Culpeper County. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Toomey? Thank you very much, Mr. Toomey.
Thank you.
All right. Next up on the agenda, we have the board considering sending a letter to PJM Board of Managers requesting they decline to approve the proposed Joshua Falls Yeat scope change in its current form. Mr. McCrone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the draft letter was provided to you after going through legal and planning and zoning review with minor changes, but the substance remained the same. It characterizes what was presented to you and, requests the PJM board decline the project in its current form, release more information, evaluate analysis of alternatives, and clarify the local benefit to the people. Is there anything else you'd like to go through in the content of the letter? I'm happy to do so.
Members of the board, Supervisor Payne, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that we send a letter to PJM Board of Managers requesting they decline to approve the proposed Joshua Fall Yeats scope change in its current form.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Sounds like we ought to send it soon if it's July when they're going to be considering this. So like immediately. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're sending the letter. Thanks.